Part 27. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 262. The figure in front paused, slowly turned around, and looked at Tang Ning, his expression unchanged from beginning to end. Tang Ning looked at Fang Jie as if she were looking at a soulless body. What was in front of him was not a living person, but an unconscious walking corpse. Even when Tang Ning attacked him yesterday, he didn't make any move to resist, let alone now. He just looked at him with indifferent eyes. Seeing his appearance, Tang Ning calmed down and said, "Sister Fang, is it convenient for us to find a place to sit down and talk?" Fang Jie stared blankly in a certain direction without responding. Tang Ning didn't look at him again and walked straight forward. A moment later, Hongxiu Pavilion. Miss Chu Chu poured 2 cups of tea, looked at him and said, "I'm right over there. If you have any instructions, sir, just wave and I'll come over." Tang Ning did not drink tea, but looked across the way and said, "Xinyu and I have known each other a long time ago. I regard her as a sister. I just didn't know that Mr. Fang was her father. I was impulsive. Please forgive me, Mr. Fang." Although saying this seemed a bit like giving Fang Jie an advantage, he couldn't say that he had always regarded Fang Xiaoyu as his daughter, so he didn't care about the small loss. Fang Jie looked at the tea on the table and finally said, "What if I don't forgive you?" Tang Ning thought for a while and said, "Then let's have a fair and just fight. I can give you a hand." Fang Jie looked away and said calmly, "Just say what you want to say, no need to beat around the bush." Tang Ning took a sip of tea and said, "You are Xinyu's father. If anyone bullies her, you cannot bully her." Fang Jie picked up the teacup and said, "You have too much time to take care of yourself, so you still have the time to care about other people's affairs." Tang Ning put down her teacup and asked, "Why did Mr. Fang say this?" "Nothing in this world is perfect." Fang Jie looked at the tea and said, "Do you know why His Majesty is so indulgent to you?" Tang Ning thought for a while and said, "Because he doesn't want to see a dominant Tang family." As expected of being the top 3 scholar. Fang Jie took a sip of tea and said, "You did not disappoint His Majesty. So what if the top 3 picks are ranked first, isn't Master Fang the same?" Tang Ning waved her hand and said, "I'm too lazy to care about other people's affairs, and I won't do it, but who asked her to call me brother Tang Ning?" Fang Jie's eyes did not waver, and he said, "It is your Majesty who makes the Tang family suffer, not you, but it is you who the Tang family hates. Don't think that with 2 books and a few rumors, you can bring down the Tang family. The trouble has just begun. This matter is not important and has nothing to do with Mr. Fang." Tang Ning looked at him and said, "I promised Xinyu not to fight with you again, but I know many experts, very, very high ones. You don't bully her again." Fang Jie didn't respond directly to him, put down his teacup, stood up, and said, "Farewell." Tang Ning looked at his leaving figure and suddenly asked, "No matter what the reason is for you to be like this, what's her fault?" The figure paused for a moment, but it was only for a moment. He quickly stepped forward again and disappeared into the Red Sleeve Pavilion. Tang Ning picked up the teacup and drank it all in one gulp, with a depressed expression on her face. Although he was angry about Fang Jie, he was more helpless. The other party is the first top-ranked scholar in the history of Chen Kingdom, and his IQ is not comparable to that of a second-rater like Xiaoju. Such people are generally not easily persuaded by others. Judging from the current situation, Fang Jie is a person who doesn't take soft and hard tactics. Mr. Fang Hongfang is such a reasonable person, and concubine Fang Shu is also virtuous and virtuous. Why did the old Fang family have such a thing? He sat in Hongxiu Pavilion for a while, talked to Miss Chu Chu, and then walked out. On the street, a girl rode on the neck of a strong man and shouted in a clear voice, "Daddy, I want to eat candied haws." The strong man was tall and had a fleshy face, but he didn't look vicious at all. He turned around, looked at the girl, and said, I already ate one this morning, so why do I need more? Eating too much candied haws is bad for your teeth. Be obedient, Daddy will buy it for you tomorrow. The girl shook her head, pursed her lips, twisted her body and said, No, no, I want it. Okay, okay, stop shaking. If you shake me again, you will knock me out. The big man quickly begged for mercy and said, then eat another one, but you can't tell your mother when you go back, otherwise there will be no candied haws to eat tomorrow. The girl let out a cheer, rode on the strong man's body, and walked towards the vendor selling candied haws. At the corner of the street, a figure stood there. Until the two figures, one large and one small, disappeared, they were still staring in that direction. Fang family. A woman looked at Fang Hong and said, you can't talk about the fourth brother. Even the Empress is angry this time. No matter what Xinyu says, she is still his biological child. Look at him. Fang Hong sighed and said helplessly, if he was willing to listen to me, he wouldn't have been so depressed in the past 10 years. The woman thought for a while and said, how about I let my mother talk about it? You don't know his temper yet, and you won't listen to anyone else. Fang Hong shook his head and said, how wonderful it would be if that incident hadn't happened. A servant came in from outside and said, Master, Madam, the fourth master is back. I know. Fang Hong nodded, looked at the woman, and said, I will find time to talk to him again. Fang family, somewhere in the yard. Fang Zhe walked into the room, and the woman waiting at the table immediately stood up and said, I'm back, let's eat quickly. She took out the hot food, placed it on the table, and then left the room. Fang Zhe pondered for a moment and suddenly said, let's stay and eat together. The woman's footsteps paused, her body stiffened slightly, and she didn't believe her ears. Fang Zhe looked up at her and repeated, let's stay and eat together. Oh, okay. The woman was stunned for a moment, confirming that she heard correctly, then slowly moved over and sat down opposite him. Mom, Sister Zairu and I have learned how to make 1,000-layer cake again, a clear voice came from outside the door. Fang Xinyu ran in from the outside with a smile on her face. When she saw Fang Zhe also in the room, her footsteps he paused immediately, and a paper bag in his hand fell to the ground, and the cakes inside fell out. She wrung her hands together, lowered her head, and whispered, Dad. Fang Zhe stood up, walked over, bent down to pick up the cakes on the ground, picked out the 2 cakes that fell out of the paper bag, blew on them, and put them into his mouth. It's delicious, he said this and put another piece into his mouth. Since joining the Hanlin Academy, Tang Ning's wake-up time has become regular. He usually gets up at 6 o'clock, gets dressed, washes up, and has a meal. When he arrives at the Hanlin Academy, it's almost 7 o'clock. After ordering, he goes back to his room, makes a cup of tea, and starts a leisurely life for the day. After 9 o'clock, other officials of the Hanlin Academy began their daily business. Sushi Kong also made a cup of tea, picked up the teacup, saw the figure walking in from the door, and said casually, Good morning, Mr. Fang. Fang Zhe looked at him and smiled slightly, Good morning, Mr. Kong. Sushi Kong shook his hand and poured a cup of hot tea onto his body. He was shocked because of the heat. His beloved purple sand cup also fell to the ground and broke into several pieces. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 263. Good morning, good morning. Mr. Kong looked at Fang Zhe, who had returned to his seat, his eyes almost popped out of his sockets. He had been in the Hanlin Academy for more than 20 years, and had worked with Fang Zhe for 14 years. He had become accustomed to greeting Fang Zhe every day, and he was also accustomed to his lack of response. This Mr. Fang's eccentric personality was not only his, but also many colleagues in the Hanlin Academy had long been accustomed to it. Fang Zhe's unusual good morning made him stand there in a daze, and he was very suspicious. Could it be that Mr. Fang was possessed by a ghost today? All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and then he realized that his thighs were a little hot. He looked down at the wet collar and the broken teacup on the ground. The corners of his mouth twitched, and his face showed extreme pain. In addition to the pain, he was somewhat sober. Although the purple clay cup was broken, there were still a few at home. Fortunately, the purple clay teapot was still there. Two strange things happened in the Hanlin Academy today. One of them was that the attendant scholar Kong seemed to have wet his pants, and the hem of his clothes was wet, which caused the officials of the Hanlin Academy to whisper about it. The second one was even more incredible, even sensational. When someone was paying a visit to Scholar Kong, he actually saw Scholar Fang Zhe smiling. There were dozens of officials in the Hanlin Academy, and no one had ever seen Scholar Fang smile in the past 10 years. He was always seen in a daze. Scholar Fang's smile was as rare as a 1,000-year-old iron tree blooming. When the other two Hanlin editors in the duty room discussed this matter, they did not deliberately lower their voices. At that time, Tang Ning was having a meal, and Zairu and Xiaoi had prepared the food for him in the morning. Fang Zhe's dead face could actually smile, and Tang Ning could not imagine what he looked like when he smiled. Fang Xinyu came in from outside and said, "Brother Tang Ning, I made a mixed casserole, do you want to try some?" Looking at the steaming bowl she brought out, Tang Ning asked in surprise, "When did you make this?" The food he brought in the morning was already cold by noon, so there was no reason why the food Fang Xiaoyu brought was still steaming. "I asked Zhao Yuan to take me to the imperial kitchen to make it." Fang Xinyu looked at him and said with a smile, "I will come to deliver food to my father every noon in the future, and I will also make a portion for brother Tang Ning." Tang Ning grasped the key point in her words and asked, "Deliver food to your father?" Fang Xinyu nodded and said, "Well, we get out of class early at noon, and I don't want to eat the food in the imperial kitchen anyway, so I'll make more and send it to you." Tang Ning couldn't complain about the working meals in the imperial kitchen. There were many officials in the Hanlin Academy who brought their own meals like him, but this was not the point. The point was that the relationship between Fang Xiaoyu and Fang Zhe seemed to be different from before. Did his threat yesterday really work? Or was Fang Zhe muddle-headed for 14 years, and was awakened by a few punches from him? Tang Ning looked at Fang Xiaoyu's cheerful back as she ran away, thinking that some people really don't know how to wake up unless they are beaten, and they feel uncomfortable if they are not beaten. Sometimes, just talking is useless, and violence is the most effective way to solve problems. Mr. Kong finally dried his clothes, hugged the purple clay teapot, and still felt pain for the purple clay cup that was broken in the morning. An official walked in from outside and said, "Brother Kong, there are some urgent matters at home, and I have to go home now. If the scholar asks, please let the scholar know." Mr. Kong nodded and said, "Mr. Yang, go back first, I will tell the scholar when the time comes." The officials of the Hanlin Academy are relatively idle on weekdays. They just lecture to the princes and give lessons. When the emperor summons them, they serve on the left and right and draft edicts. There are almost no other matters. Not long after Lord Yang left, he got up and packed up, ready to teach the princes and the children of the princes and nobles. Just then, an eunuch came in from outside and said, "Your Majesty has ordered a scholar from the Hanlin Academy to wait in the imperial study." When the emperor was reviewing memorials, there were often officials around him to draft the edict or advise him. Sometimes this person was the secretary of the Central Secretariat, sometimes the secretary of the East, and sometimes the Hanlin Academy's reader and lecturer. There was one Hanlin scholar in the Hanlin Academy, 2 readers and 2 lecturers. Now, one of the 2 lecturers had reported illness 2 days ago, and the other had just left. As a reader, he had to teach the princes immediately. Officials below the scholars were not qualified to serve His Majesty, so Kong Sushi immediately felt troubled. "I'll go," a voice came from beside Kong Sushi. Kong Sushi turned his head and looked at Fang Zhe, his mouth slightly open in surprise. The Hanlin Academy nominally has 2 attendant scholars, but in fact there is only him. Fang Zhe has been sleeping in the Hanlin Academy for the past 14 years, and has never taken care of things, let alone consulting. Could it be that he is really possessed by a ghost today? After being stunned for a moment, he immediately came to his senses, nodded stiffly, and said, then I will trouble Lord Fang. In the imperial study, Emperor Chen was flipping through the memorials, and an eunuch quietly led someone in and stood in an inconspicuous corner below. Wei Jian glanced casually, and his expression suddenly froze. He looked at the man standing in the corner, twisted his wrist, and when he looked again, the surprise on his face could no longer be dispelled. The Ministry of Water Resources has done some great things this time. In the next few years, the court will no longer have to spend a lot of money on controlling floods. Emperor Chen closed a memorial with satisfaction and said, as long as it can be solved if there is a flood, what if we allocate another 50,000 taels of silver? I will give them another 100,000 taels. He picked up another memorial and said casually, draw up a decree and order the Ministry of Household Affairs to allocate another 100,000 taels to the Ministry of Water. According to the order. Chen Huang opened the new memorial and after reading 2 lines, he suddenly seemed to think of something and stopped moving his hands. 3 bachelors from the Hanlin Academy often served at his side, and he was naturally familiar with their voices, but the voice just now was definitely not that of any of the 3. He raised his head and looked down. Stab. The expression on his face was extremely unexpected, and the memorial in his hand was torn into 2 halves. Not long after, in Shuxia Palace, Emperor Chen's face was full of confusion and he murmured, could it be that he was really beaten awake by Tang Ning? Concubine Fang Shu's face was also full of joy and she asked, Your Majesty, is he really awake? I have been waiting for him for 14 years. Huang Chen said with a depressed expression on his face, if I had known that beating him would wake him up, I would have had him beaten 8 times a day. The imperial examination only takes place every 3 years, and most of the number 1 candidates will become the mainstay of the imperial court more than 10 decades later, not to mention the first top 3 number 1 candidates in history. He once had high expectations for Fang Zhe, but the greater the expectations, the greater the disappointment. Fang Zhe had wasted 14 years in the Hanlin Academy, and he had already given up on him. But what I didn't expect was that 14 years later, the Fang Zhe from before would actually come back. When he walked out of Shuxia Palace, he asked, who was the Minister of Household Affairs last recommended by the Ministry of Personnel? The position of Minister of Household Affairs has been vacant for a long time. As early as 2 months ago, the Ministry of Personnel recommended many people to take up the position, but until today, it has not been finally decided. Wei Jian thought for a while and said, it's Mr. Huang from the Ministry of Industry. Chen Huang shook his head and said, from the Ministry of Industry to the Ministry of Household Affairs, the span is quite large. Let Fang Zhe serve as Minister of Household Affairs for the time being. Wei Jian lowered his head and said, I obey the order. He secretly sighed in his heart, although the span from the Ministry of Industry to the Ministry of Household Affairs is a bit larger, isn't the span from the Hanlin Academy to the Ministry of Household Affairs not that big? What's more, even though the Minister of Works is not as important as the Minister of Hubu, they are still at the same level. From the 5th grade bachelor of the Hanlin Academy to the 4th grade Minister of Hubu, there is a lot of difference in the middle. Chen Huang glanced at Wei Jian and asked, what do you want to say? Wei Jian thought for a while, bowed and said, Your Majesty, regardless of the recommendation of the court ministers, promoted Mr. Fang in an unusual way. I am afraid that the adults in the court will have objections. Who has any opinions? Chen Huang waved his hand and said, if they can give me a top-rank scholar, why not give them the position of Minister of Household Affairs? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 264. In the Hanlin Academy, Bachelor Kong was leaning on his chair, holding a precious purple clay pot in his hand, stroking it gently with his fingers. The purple clay pot has many advantages. Using this pot to make tea will not take away the true aroma of the tea. This pot has been in his hands for many years. Even if no tea leaves are used and only boiling water is poured into the empty pot, there is still a rich tea aroma. Although he loves tea, he also loves pots even more, but it's a pity that the set of purple clay pots is no longer complete because a cup was broken yesterday. As a bachelor, although he is not the most powerful official in the Hanlin Academy, the bachelor is busy outside and rarely comes back. Fang Jie is like that. The real person in power of the Hanlin Academy should be him. Right. He glanced at Fang Jie, who was holding a book and reading opposite him. Since yesterday, Fang Jie had changed from his usual depressed look. He was used to seeing him half dead, but he suddenly became normal, but he was not used to it. He didn't know why he suddenly changed like this. Could it be that he was really woken up by Tang Xiaozuan? In fact, in comparison, he would rather Fang Jie maintain his previous appearance. When Sushi Kong was alone with his thoughts, someone strode in from outside the door. Sushi Kong raised his head and glanced up. He didn't even have time to put down the purple clay pot, so he immediately stood up and said, "Sir, bachelor." The Hanlin bachelor came in and nodded slightly to him. When he looked at Fang Jie, his eyes were a little complicated. He had just returned from the morning court. In today's morning court, the position of Minister of Household Affairs, which had been vacant for a long time, was finally confirmed. To the surprise of all the courtiers, the person who served as the Minister of Household Affairs was not the most vocal adults in the court, but Fang Jie, a scholar at the Hanlin Academy. The Minister of Household Affairs was the 4th rank, while the Bachelor of Attendant was only the 5th rank. Such promotions to several levels in succession rarely happened in the current dynasty. The emperor could increase the rank at will based on his personal likes and dislikes, and the courtiers would not agree. But in today's morning court, when His Majesty announced this matter, the court fell into rare silence. Even Yushi Tai, who usually likes to toss the most, rarely said much. Fang Jie was the number 1 scholar in 3 consecutive exams, which was rare throughout history, and his ability was not an issue. However, he had already completed his qualifications in the Hanlin Academy for 14 years, and no one would use his qualifications to judge anything. More importantly, the name Fang Jie represents a legend. Even if the courtiers have not heard this name for many years, they will not forget it easily. The Hanlin bachelor looked at Fang Jie. His former subordinate had suddenly become a giant in the court. His status and rank were still above him. Although he felt uncomfortable in his heart, he could only squeeze out a smile and said, "Master Fang, congratulations. I am honored to be promoted to Minister of Household Affairs this time." Snapped. Inside the check-in room, the sound of breaking porcelain was particularly harsh. Secretary of Household Affairs. Sushi Kong murmured, then seemed to realize something, looked down, and his face suddenly turned pale. He squatted down, his lips trembled, and he slowly picked up a few pieces of the purple clay pot, his eyes already a little moist. After a long time, he straightened up and held the fragment in his arms. With difficulty, he cupped his hand to Fang Jie and said, "Congratulations, Fang Shilang." Tang Ning learned during lunch that Fang Jie was about to serve as the Minister of Household Affairs and concurrently as the Bachelor of Arts. From serving as a bachelor to being a Minister of Household Affairs, this is a step to the sky, but it is also something that others cannot envy. After all, Fang Jie was not only the number 1 winner of 3 consecutive prizes, but also had 14 years of working experience in the Hanlin Academy. He had academic qualifications, and accumulated a lot of experience. Others could not fault him at all. It's just a pity that King Kong had been fighting with King Duan for so long. After all the efforts in the court, the duck had been cooked and cut into slices. When it was time to dip it in the sauce, someone else took away the plate. This kind of thing is uncomfortable for anyone. In Prince Kang's mansion, Prince Kong, who had just returned from the palace, had a sinking face. The maids and servants around him were waiting on him carefully, not daring to express their anger. Fangzhe, Fangzhe. King Kang's face was livid, and he muttered the name, and said gloomily, "You don't come out of the mountain early, you don't come out late, but you come out at this time, all the efforts I have spent before will be in vain." A middle-aged counselor beside him comforted him, "Your Highness, there is no need to be angry. Although the Minister of Household Affairs is not one of ours, he is not one of King Duan and King Huai. This is not the worst outcome." Prince Kong paced back and forth in the hall, feeling resentful and resentful. He suddenly said, "It is said that he was beaten by Tang Ning and became enlightened." The middle-aged counselor immediately said, "Your Highness must not doubt Mr. Tang because of these rumors. That Fangzhe is a third-level official. Although he has been silent for more than 10 years, Your Majesty still values him very much. Your Highness, please don't forget that Mr. Tang is more powerful than Mr. Tang since Fangzhe is still victorious. If Your Highness angers Mr. Tang because of this, it will be a small gain at the expense of a big gain." "Of course I know this," King Kong said in a depressed tone, gritting his teeth, "but I am not willing to accept it. A Minister of Household Affairs is worth a lot of connections in the court. Just give him away like this. How can you make me reconcile?" The middle-aged counselor continued to comfort him, "Your Highness, how can a person who achieves great things care about temporary gains and losses? Don't forget, Your Highness, that this Minister of Household Affairs originally belonged to King Duan's camp. Now, even though Fangzhe came out halfway, he still can't. No one is taking advantage of Prince Duan, nor is it taking advantage of the Tang family. No one is taking advantage. In the end, we don't suffer at all. Brother Tang Ning won't eat, it will give you an advantage." Fang Xiaoyu handed the meal prepared for Tang Ning to Zhao Yuan and said, "You are so fat that you can't even run. How can the Wang family's sister like you like this? If you really like someone, you won't just like his appearance. Besides, cousin, you used to be fatter than me, but now you are so thin." "I will definitely be as thin as you in the future," Zhao Yuan said while eating big mouthfuls of rice. "By the way, my uncle got promoted. When will he treat us to dinner?" Tang Ning watched Fang Xiaoyu and Zhao Yuan talking and suddenly realized something. The Fang family used to have only Fang Hong, the Minister of Personnel, to support them. In the capital where there were many powerful people, they were not very noticeable. But since Fangzhe was promoted to the Minister of Revenue, everything has changed. Among the 6 ministries, although the Ministry of Rights is the leader, the real power lies in the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of Personnel. One of them is in charge of the state's money and grain, and the other is in charge of the appointment and dismissal of officials. These are the top priorities. Otherwise, Prince Kong and Prince Duan would not have fought each other over a vice minister of the Ministry of Revenue. The Fang family has a vice minister of the Ministry of Revenue and a vice minister of the Ministry of Personnel. This is unique in the entire capital. Although Tang Huai is the Minister of Rights, the Ministry of Rights can only play a starting role in the imperial examinations held every 3 years. Now the emperor is slowly diluting the power of the Ministry of Rights in charge of the imperial examinations, and the Ministry of Rights will gradually become a department that people talk about. As for Tang Chi, it's better not to mention Tang Chi now. The small piece of land in the Imperial College is enough for him to toss. As for Tang Jing, the father of Tang Shui's cousin, whom Tang Ning has never met, I only heard that he is the secretary of the Central Secretariat. Although the status of the secretary of the Central Secretariat is not low, it is still far inferior to the second in command of the Ministry of Personnel and the Ministry of Revenue. If the Tang family had not relied on the influence accumulated in the court after years of operation and the support of the Prince Duan camp, it would not be as good as the Fang family now. Although Fang Xiaoyu has lost weight, the Fang family has unknowingly become a thick thigh. It's a pity that he may never be able to hold this thigh. I didn't expect that the emperor actually valued Fang Zhe so much and gave him the position of Minister of the Ministry of Revenue at the beginning. I don't know to what extent he will be promoted in the future. He beat Fang Zhe so badly that the bruises on his face have not disappeared yet. He also threatened that if he bullied Fang Xiaoyu again in the future, he would ask someone to see him and beat him every time. I don't know what kind of character this Lord Fang is, whether he is open-minded and broad-minded. The news that Mr. Fang was promoted to the Minister of the Ministry of Revenue spread throughout the Hanlin Academy in a short period of time. The direct promotion from the reading bachelor to the Minister of the Ministry of Revenue shocked everyone, and at the same time, infinite hope rose in their hearts. This is the Hanlin Academy. Although they are not of high rank and are not as powerful as the officials of the 6 ministries, after some training, those who come out of the Hanlin Academy are extraordinary. Lord Fang waited for 14 years before he was promoted to the top. Why are they so anxious? Officials of the Hanlin Academy, big and small, are very excited about the promotion of Mr. Fang. Except for Mr. Kong. According to an eyewitness who did not want to be named, after Mr. Fang was promoted, Mr. Kong was envious and jealous. In a rage, he smashed his favorite purple clay teapot. When the cleaner came in, Mr. Kong was smashing cups. A whole set of purple clay teacups were smashed to pieces by him. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 265. Compared with the Hanlin Academy, the affairs of the Ministry of Finance are much busier. It is normal for the Minister of the Ministry of Finance to concurrently serve as a bachelor of the Hanlin Academy. However, it has not been like this since the founding of this dynasty. Statement. Unexpectedly, this was His Majesty's will, and Fang Zhe was a person who found it difficult to find reasons to refute. The matter was soon officially finalized. In a short period of time, the Hanlin Academy left an attendant and a bachelor, both of whom were promoted to the Ministry of Household Affairs. These two matters aroused heated discussions in a small area of the Hanlin Academy. Whether it was Tang Shidu or Fang Sushi, they had one thing in common before they were promoted. That is, they were all beaten by the newly appointed Tang Xiaozwen. Even though they know that there is no inevitable connection between these two things, the things are so coincidental that some good people are even secretly betting on which bachelor will be the next to win this honor. Tang Ning was in her own room and couldn't hear the gossip outside. He was thinking about another thing. The Hubyu Yamen is outside the palace. Fang Xiaoyu's father has just been promoted to the position of Minister of Hubyu. He must focus on the affairs of the Hubyu. This means that he will not see Fang Zhe for some time. In this way, even if Fang Zhe still remembers what happened last time, he can't control him. Even if he wants to put some shoes on him, he can live in the Hanlin Academy peacefully. This kind of life of going to work on time, getting off work on time, reading and writing manuscripts is quite leisurely, and he doesn't want to be disturbed by other things. Chawai Palace. King Duan stepped into the palace, bowed slightly and said, "My son, please give my regards to my mother and concubine." Concubine Tang Hui waved her hand and said, "There are no outsiders here, no need to be polite, just sit down." She sat on the couch and asked, "I heard that Fang Zhe was promoted to Minister of Household Affairs." King Duan nodded and said, "I don't know what my father is thinking about promoting a bachelor to 3 levels in a row and holding such an important position in the Ministry of Household Affairs." Concubine Tang Hui looked at him and said, "More than 10 years ago, you were too young. It is normal that you have not heard of Fang Zhe. He can take the position of Minister of Household Affairs. Besides, it is better for His Majesty to promote Fangjia, it's better to promote others. That's true. Prince Duan was obviously in a happier mood and said, Zhao Cheng must be very angry this time because he failed to achieve anything. He has put in a lot of effort for the position of Minister of Household Affairs. After speaking, he shook his head again and said, however, this Minister of Household Affairs was originally one of ours. In the final analysis, it is still our loss. My uncle was transferred to the Imperial College. Some people in the court thought that the Tang family had lost power. He started to sway from side to side, and if this continues, I will have nothing to fight with Zhao Cheng. It's all my fault for that evil aunt. Concubine Tang Hui looked at him, frowned slightly, and said, I have warned you a long time ago that you must guard against arrogance and impatience when doing things, and do not rush into hasty success. The reason why the Tang family is like this is because they are too impatient, which has aroused His Majesty's dissatisfaction. Do you really think that His Majesty will transfer your uncle to the Imperial College because of the Tang family's family affairs? Who can guess what my father is thinking? King Duan took a sip of tea and said, for so many years, he has neither established a queen nor a prince, and he has left Zhao Cheng, Zhao Rui, and me in the capital. I don't know. Shut up. Concubine Tang Hui frowned, slammed the table, and said, you can say such a treasonous thing. King Duan immediately said, my son is confused for a moment. Mother and concubine, please calm down. Concubine Tang Hui looked at him and said in a deep voice, remember, the only person who can ultimately decide who will pass the throne to is your father. All external things can only help. The most important thing is to rely on yourself. If you fail to live up to your expectations, even the two prime ministers of the Tang family will not be able to help you. King Duan looked solemn and said, my son, I will teach you. After concubine Tang Hui reprimanded her, the atmosphere in the palace suddenly became tense. The next moment, the tense atmosphere was broken by a clear voice coming from outside. Concubine Hui, I'm here to see you. A girl in luxurious clothes walked in from outside the palace and said in surprise, hey, the emperor is here too. Concubine Tang Hui looked at her with a smile on her face and said, Manor is here, come to me quickly. Zhao Man sat down in front of her and asked, Concubine Hui, has Brother Jing recovered from his injury? Why haven't you come to the palace yet? Concubine Tang Hui said, your brother Jing has been transferred to the Ministry of Household Affairs now, and you don't need to come to the palace in the future. Ah, the girl was stunned and asked, why? Is he afraid that the villain will bully him? If he bullies Brother Jing again, I will ask my father to deal with him. Concubine Tang Hui shook her head and said, it's a good thing that he was transferred to the Ministry of Household Affairs. Your father agreed. The girl clenched her fists tightly and said, Brother Jing must be afraid of that evil man. He is so cruel, even me is cruel, and he also likes to beat people, it's all his fault. No one in the palace can accompany me now. She sat in Chuhui Palace for a while and then returned to her bedroom angrily. A female officer came in from outside, walked to her ear, and whispered a few words. Her spirits perked up and she immediately asked, are you telling the truth? The female officer whispered, Princess, I asked someone to inquire about it in the Hanlin Academy. It should be true. Humph, the girl crossed her arms and said, he is receiving a salary from the state but neglecting his duties all day long. His father actually values him so highly. She thought for a while, with a smile on her face, and said, let's go. The female officer asked doubtfully, where to go? Go to the Imperial Study Room, I want to find my father. In the Imperial Study Room, Emperor Chen was led out of the palace door by the girl. He shook his head and said, Manor, don't be ridiculous. My father still has some state affairs to deal with. The girl held his arm and said, Father, there are so many memorials, you can't finish them. The imperial doctor has said that you can't sit for a long time. Father and Manor, please go for a walk in the palace. Father will review them when you feel tired. Go out for a walk, get some fresh air, and take a walk, it's good for your health. Chen Huang followed her down the steps and asked in surprise, why do you care about my father's health today? I have always been very concerned about my father's health. A smile appeared on the girl's face and she said, I will accompany my father for more walks in the future, so that my father's health can be good and he can live a long life. Chen Huang stood in the empty square in front of the palace and took a deep breath. As expected, he felt that his whole body felt much more refreshed and the fatigue just now was also reduced. He smiled and said, then father, please accompany Manor for a walk. The two were followed by a group of eunuchs and maids and passed through several doors. The girl raised her head and suddenly pointed to a building in front of her and said, Father, the Hanlin Academy is just ahead. How about we go to the Hanlin Academy to take a look? Emperor Chen asked in surprise, what are you doing in the Hanlin Academy? The girl thought for a while and said, Father is in the palace all day long and doesn't know what's going on outside. If you go to these yamen and take a look, you will know if they are lazy. Even if they are not lazy, you can supervise them. Let them strictly demand themselves at all times and serve the court and the country. Chen Huang thought for a moment, nodded and said, okay, let's go and have a look. The officer at the entrance of the Hanlin Academy saw a dozen figures approaching in front of him, and when he was about to step forward to ask, he saw a golden dragon embroidered on the clothes of the person in the front. He finally realized something, his feet softened, and he immediately said, see your majesty. The officer shivered and straightened up, saying, Your Majesty, I'm going to report this to the bachelor. Hey, stop, the girl hurriedly stopped him, looked at Emperor Chen and said, Father, after he went in to report, the people here will be prepared. We will go in quietly like this, and what we will see is them. How it looks on a daily basis. Emperor Chen nodded and said, no need to report. The Hanlin Academy is an aristocratic yamen, and most of the officials are very laid back. They are not in a hurry for things like compiling books and compiling history, and they live a very leisurely life on weekdays. In a valuable room, two officials were sitting at the table playing chess, one of them holding a white piece, thinking for a long time. The person opposite showed an impatient look on his face and urged, Mr. Zheng, you have already thought about how long it takes to make a cup of tea. Do you want to finish it? What's the rush? The official glanced at him and said, let me think about it again. At this moment, a hand stretched out from behind him, pointed to a position on the chessboard, and said, get down here. Master Zheng looked at it carefully and was immediately overjoyed. He dropped the white piece and said, thank you so much. A trace of anger appeared on the face of the official opposite, and he said, a true gentleman watches the chess without speaking, who is talking too much. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 266. Emperor Chen looked at the two of them with his hands behind his back and said, it's not time to leave the court yet, but you two are already playing chess in the Hanlin Academy. You seem to have some leisure time. When the official who had just spoken raised his head and saw the figure standing opposite him, he felt as if he was struck by thunder. His legs softened and he fell to his knees with a plop, trembling, Your Majesty, I didn't know it was you. Please forgive me, please forgive me. The Lord Zheng who held the white chess piece had already been trembling with fear. He turned his head and didn't even dare to look at him. He also fell to his knees with a plop and said loudly, Your Majesty, please forgive me. Come on, take these two guys who neglected their duties out and give them 20 strokes of the cane each. Thinking of the headache of reviewing memorials, these guys were actually free enough to play chess. When Emperor Chen looked at one of them with a gloomy face, he added, a true gentleman watches chess without speaking, give this true gentleman another 10 strokes. Two Hanlin Academy officials were dragged out with their mouths covered. The girl looked at Emperor Chen and sighed, "Father, the Hanlin Academy is in the palace, and they are so lazy and slack. I don't know how loose the government offices outside are." Emperor Chen walked out of the door angrily and said, "Go to the next room." He dismissed most of the eunuchs and only took 2 people with him. Every time he walked into a duty room, there was a commotion in the duty room. In the duty room of the Hanlin Academy, some people were drinking tea, some were playing chess, some were chatting, and of course there were people who were really busy with affairs. The latter were mostly Nujinshi this year. After Emperor Chen ordered people to drag a few people out, the noise they made had already made the whole Hanlin Academy aware of it. The Hanlin scholar walked out quickly and said in horror, "Hanlin scholar Zhou Bo sees your majesty." Emperor Chen looked at him and said in a deep voice, "Scholar Zhou, you disappoint me." Scholar Zhou's heart skipped a beat and he immediately said, "I have no way to discipline my subordinates. Please punish me, your majesty." Emperor Chen glanced at him and said, "Gather all the officials of your Hanlin Academy." The girl showed regret on her face. She should have inquired about Tang Ning's duty room early and rushed in as soon as she entered the Hanlin Academy. Now that he got the news, he would probably be spared a beating. Soon, all the officials of the Hanlin Academy were gathered in the yard. Scholar Zhou looked around and asked, "Is everyone here?" A Hanlin editor said, "Editor Tang seems to be on duty." Scholar Zhou was stunned, not understanding what could be more important than the emperor's summons, and immediately asked, "What is he doing on duty?" The official answered honestly, "When I came out, Editor Tang was sleeping." The girl was stunned at first, and then a gloating smile appeared on her face. Tang Ning had never thought that life in the Hanlin Academy was so boring. Besides reading and copying books, there were only men, and there was not even a pleasing girl. He finally understood why Fang Zhe had slept here for 14 years. To this extent, what else can he do besides sleeping? After writing 2 volumes of the storybook, his eyelids could not open. The sound of the 2 editors playing chess opposite him, the sound of the chess pieces hitting the chessboard, was like a lullaby. He lay on the table and fell asleep soon. "Today I wrote a new volume of The Fairy and the Fairy. I dreamed of 7 fairies bathing. What was even more bizarre was that one of the fairies looked exactly like the silly princess he had seen in the palace. Not only that, the fairy was a rogue fairy who came up to take off his clothes." Zhao Man grabbed Tang Ning's sleeve and shouted, "Get up, get up." The fairy in the dream was very strong, but as a married woman, how could he give in? So Tang Ning shouted, "Girl, please respect yourself," and the fairy seemed to be frightened and finally let him go. Then he woke up from his dream and saw a girl standing in front of him with a frightened face. There were several figures in front of him, namely the emperor, the Hanlin scholar, and several other officials of the Hanlin Academy. How could the emperor appear in the Hanlin Academy? His dream was really getting more and more bizarre. Tang Ning lay down again, adjusted a comfortable posture, and closed his eyes again. The girl grabbed Emperor Chen's sleeve in grievance and said, "Father, look at him." Cough. Hanlin scholar finally couldn't help but coughed heavily. Tang Ning opened his eyes, raised his head and looked, and found that Emperor Chen and Hanlin scholar were still standing there. He stood up suddenly, clasped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, I pay my respects to you." Emperor Chen looked at him and asked, "You are so lazy just after taking office. Is this Hanlin Academy where you sleep?" Tang Ning stood up and bowed, saying, "I was reading classics for a long time and was too tired. I accidentally fell asleep. Please punish me, your Majesty." Emperor Chen waved his hand and said, "Since I am tired from reading, it's fine." The girl stepped forward a few steps, pointed to a paper roll on his desk, and said, "Father, don't be fooled by him. He is clearly reading a storybook." "Princess, you don't understand this," Tang Ning explained. "People's thoughts cannot be focused on one thing for a long time. After reading classics for a long time, you can read storybooks again." This is a combination of work and rest, and you can quickly regain your energy. You are quibbling. The girl picked up a thick book he placed on the table, a sly look in her eyes, and asked, "You said you were reading classics just now." Tang Ning smelled the smell of conspiracy from the girl. He nodded and said, "Yes." The girl looked at him and said, "Then tell me, what is this book about?" The emperor didn't care, but she, a princess, was still holding on to him. Tang Ning looked at the aggressive girl and finally realized that the princess was looking for trouble with him. He looked at the girl and asked, "This book has 70 volumes. I wonder which volume the princess is talking about." The girl put one hand on her waist and asked, "What do you think the 30th volume of this book is about?" All the officials of the Hanlin Academy, including the Hanlin scholars, shook their heads slightly. Such a thick book, let alone the newly employed Hanlin editors, even they couldn't remember what each volume said. These books were only for understanding. The princess's move was obviously forcing others. Tang Ning recalled for a moment and said, "The 30th volume of this book talks about geography." "If you say it's geography, then it's geography," the girl shrugged her nose and said while flipping through the book, "If you're wrong, it's deceiving the emperor, and my father will beat you with a stick." As she flipped through the pages, her face changed. She glanced at Tang Ning and said unconvincedly, "What's so great about knowing geography? Do you know what the 35th volume is?" Tang Ning said, "The 35th volume talks about rituals and music." The girl was stunned and flipped through a few more pages. She said unconvincedly, "The 40th volume." Tang Ning said calmly, "The 40th volume talks about astronomy." The girl put her hands on her hips angrily and asked, "What does astronomy talk about?" The Hanlin scholar's face eased a little. The Hanlin Academy was embarrassed in front of His Majesty today. Fortunately, Tang Xiaozuan helped them save face. "I thought he just flipped through those books casually to perfunctory himself, but now it seems that he even remembered all these." Emperor Chen looked at her and said, "Manner, that's enough. Stop making trouble." In the past, Yao ordered 11 and he to calculate the sun and the moon, and to measure the stars to correct the 4 seasons. When it came to Shun, he said, in the Suanji Yuhang, to adjust the 7 political affairs after the Han dynasty, the sundial was measured to correct the Earth's center, and the realms and stars were divided, all in accordance with the ancient times. Tang Ning looked at the girl and asked, "The changes in the astronomical calendar are very complicated. Princess, do you want to listen to it anymore?" "Who wants to listen to it?" The girl looked at him angrily and stood beside Emperor Chen. Hanlin scholar chuckled and stepped forward and said, "Tang Xiaozuan is well informed and has a strong memory. I really admire him. However, these books are just for reference. Tang Xiaozuan does not need to remember so much detail, nor does he need to worry too much." Tang Ning bowed and said, "Whether it is astronomy or geography, it is always good to remember more." Hanlin scholar sighed, "I finally understand why Tang Xiaozuan was able to pass the imperial examination. With so much knowledge, you can easily answer the imperial examination questions." Tang Ning he smiled and said, "Mr. Scholar, you are too kind." Emperor Chen looked at him and said, "Mr. Zhou is right. People have limited energy. You don't need to worry about everything." Tang Ning bowed and said, "I will learn from you." The girl stood beside the smiling Emperor Chen and spat secretly. He was lucky to escape the beating this time. He would not be so lucky next time, but she had been looking forward to the volume of The Legend of the Fairy on his desk for several days. It was not available on the market yet. Where did he get it from? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 267. The Emperor's private visit to the Hanlin Academy caught everyone off guard. The Hanlin Academy is not like the six ministries and other real power yamen. Most of the time, there is nothing important to do. As time goes by, the officials naturally become slack. Playing chess and drinking tea during working hours are better than fighting when they have nothing to do. Fighting needs to be strong. Only the rookies who are newly promoted to the Hanlin Academy will work hard and conscientiously every day. If they are not transferred out in the past 2 years, they will be liberated after 3 years when new rookies are admitted to the hospital. The 2 ministers who were playing chess were dragged out and beaten. Although it was not serious, their face was completely humiliated. The others were also reprimanded miserably. The Hanlin bachelor's face was dark the whole time. Some people were reprimanded, and others were naturally praised. As a role model for everyone, Tang Ning was diligent and hard-working. He was praised by Chen Huang and Hanlin Bachelor, and urged everyone to learn from him. Tang Ning was embarrassed about this. After all, he was just sleeping while others were playing chess and drinking tea. Zhao Man stood beside Chen Huang, glanced at Tang Ning, curled her lips and said, "A nerd, what's there to be proud of?" The emperor had many things to do, so it was naturally impossible for him to stay in the Hanlin Academy for a long time. After leaving with the eunuchs and his entourage, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, Hanlin Bachelor's face turned darker than before. He glanced at everyone and said solemnly, "I'll stand in the courtyard for an hour and reflect on it." When he walked to Tang Ning's side, the smile on his face melted and he said, "Tang Xiaozwen, thank you for your hard work. Come inside and rest." Today's face in the Hanlin Academy is all thanks to Tang Ning's help. Naturally, Academician Zhou's attitude towards him is different. What's more, if he treats him better, he won't fight against him again in the future, right? When everyone is standing in the yard basking in the sun, it is actually very unwise to go back to the house to sleep alone. You are likely to be isolated from the group in the future. However, Tang Ning was always a loner, and those 2 bastards didn't even call him when they ran out, so he had to write this down first. When he walked back to the check-in room, he saw Princess Pingyang sitting in his seat, looking at the manuscript of the fairy match on the table, reading with gusto. Tang Ning walked over and put the manuscript away. The little girl was so aggressive just now. She wanted him to be dragged out by the emperor to fight, and she deliberately made things difficult for him for so long. When Emperor Chen praised him just now, she stood beside him, pouting with a look of disdain. She treated him like this, and she still wanted to. There is no way to read his books. Zhao Man stood up and said angrily, "Give it to me." Tang Ning said expressionlessly, "No, this is mine." Zhao Man put his hands on his hips and said, "I ask you to give it to me, and you have to give it to me." Tang Ning was unmoved. "Why, are you the emperor?" Zhao Man became even more angry. "I am a princess." "Oh, who isn't?" Tang Ning twitched her lips and asked, "What's wrong with the princess? She's not a little princess anymore. She doesn't look like a princess at all. The princess's illness is pretty much the same." "No, princess disease refers to those ordinary people who have excessive self-confidence and always think that they are princesses and the whole world will pamper them and the earth will revolve around them. She is a princess to begin with, so there is no such thing as princess disease." "Then she is sick." Zhao Man frowned and said, "What did you say?" Tang Ning put away the new scroll and said, "Even if you are a princess, you cannot steal other people's things." Zhao Man puffed up her chest and said, "I just robbed you. What can you do to me? Do you dare to hit me?" Tang Ning said calmly, "I will impeach you." "You?" Zhao Man pointed at him and was so angry that he couldn't speak. Although her father would not punish her because of his impeachment, if this matter was spread, how would she behave? Everyone knew that Princess Pingyang liked to rob other people's things. How could she get married in the future? What makes her even more angry is that since she was a child, her father and her brothers and sisters have pampered her, the eunuchs and maids are afraid of her, and all the children she knows dare not offend her, and no one has ever dared to talk to her like this. She was just a spoiled little girl in a movie. He had already fought with the Tang family, but he was still afraid that he couldn't defeat her? I don't want to read your crap. The fairy match has only come out in its 3rd volume. You are lying. She looked at Tang Ning, said something bitterly, then twisted her butt and ran away. Tang Ning finally saw what it means to be unruly today. This little girl is about the same age as Ching and is only a year or 2 younger than Xiao Ru Xiaoi, but her personality is completely different. Her savagery was different from that of Tang Fairy. One was unruly and the other was savage. Tang Ning still preferred the savage one. After leaving the office, he finished writing the last part of the new volume, delayed for a while, and then walked out of the check-in room. Gu Bai and other newly promoted Hanlin officials had already gone home. Other officials were still standing in the yard. Tang Ning was so engrossed in writing just now that she didn't notice that it was actually raining outside, and the rain was quite heavy. He walked around from the corridor on one side to the gate. He forgot to bring an umbrella when he went out today. The rain looked like it wouldn't stop for a while. Zhao Man came over with an umbrella held by a palace maid. When she saw Tang Ning standing under the eaves, she said happily, "Haha, you didn't bring an umbrella, I'll wet you to death." Tang Ning was speechless. This princess was really free. What the hell, she actually came over to see him soaked in the rain. Tang Ning ignored her and was about to go in to borrow an umbrella when a figure ran up from a distance and said, "Brother Tang Ning, didn't you bring an umbrella? Let's go back together." Fang Xiaoyu walked to the corridor in 2 or 2 steps and handed him her umbrella. Tang Ning glanced at the childish princess, took Fang Xiaoyu's hand, and walked toward the palace entrance. Zhao Man looked at the direction they left and stamped his feet angrily. "Let's go back. Hanlin Academy takes a bath every 5 days. It rained yesterday and didn't last long. The air was particularly fresh the next day and the roads were not muddy." Tang Ning took advantage of her day off to take her family out for an outing. In the evening, she went to Tianashanju. Suhu had a 5-day appointment with him, which happened to be on every day off. Sume lay on the bed, turned sideways and looked at him, and asked, "Are you going to hide your mother here all the time?" Although Suhu was nominally his god-sister, it still felt strange to hear her speak like this. Tang Ning thought for a while and said, "I might be troublesome for you for a long time." In this matter, he could try to save money, but in the final analysis, he still did not have the strength to compete with the Tang family head-on. Even no one in the entire capital could compete with the Tang family head-on. Once someone discovers it, not only the Tang family, but he will also be unable to explain to the emperor. Until I can think of a better solution, I can only do this. What does the family say to say thank you? Sume covered her mouth and yawned, put an arm on his body, and said, "Brother, be good, sister is going to bed." Changning Palace. Zhao Man lay on the bed, rolled around, and quickly got up again, asking, "Why haven't you come back yet?" A palace maid said, "Your Highness, don't be anxious, it should be over soon." As soon as she finished speaking, a palace maid ran in from outside and said, "Your Highness, I bought it." Zhao Man jumped off the bed with bare feet, took the thing in her hand, and said with a smile, "That fool bought fake goods from nowhere, and still treated them like treasures." When she looked at the scroll in her hand, the smile on her face gradually froze. Hanlin Academy. After what happened last time, Master Bachelor implemented disciplinary rectification in the Hanlin Academy. No one is allowed to arrive late or leave early, and is not allowed to ask for leave at will. During office hours, no one is allowed to play chess, chat, sleep, or do anything unrelated to official duties. If found out, you will be severely punished. Not long after he sat down, a Hanlin scholar came in and said with a smile, "The time for Tang Ziyuzan can be arranged freely." Your Majesty has high hopes for Tang Ziyuzhen. Tang Ziyuzhen also has suitable learning methods. I will not pointing fingers. Tang Ning thought for a while. Doesn't this mean that he can go to work, sleep, and write manuscripts as he pleases in the future? As soon as he finished polishing the ink, a figure walked in from outside the door, looked at him with wide eyes and asked, "Do you know Miss Ning Ning?" Rong Xiaorong says. "Thank you to the boss of drink by yourself and enjoy yourself for the 10,000 rewards." Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiaorong. Chapter 268. Miss Ning Ning. That's the girl Ning Ning who wrote The Legend of White Snake, Lotus Lamp and the Fairy Match. Tang Ning put down the pen she picked up and said, "We know each other. There is nothing to hide. After what happened last time, no one in Beijing knew that he was in control of Tang Renzai. There were even some false rumors that Tang Ning Ning was him. There were even more speculations about this among the people. These days, women take on men's pen names, and men often take on women's pen names. This is no longer new." Really, Zhao Man was very surprised and murmured, Tang Ning Ning, is Miss Ning Ning your elder sister or younger sister? Can you introduce her to me? Not good. I don't know if this girl is really stupid or pretending to be stupid. She tried every means to frame him 2 days ago. Now she is asking him for help so straightforwardly. Others treat her like a princess and pamper her. His princess is as small as Xiaoai. It's Xiao Xiao, not this princess-sick girl. Zhao Man was a little anxious and asked, "Why is it bad?" Tang Ning shook her head and said, "She is afraid of strangers and doesn't want to see anyone else." Zhao Man thought for a while and said, "Then after you have read the manuscript that is not on the market yet, can you let me read it too?" "Cannot." Zhao Man became even more anxious. "Why?" Tang Ning said honestly, "Because you framed me 2 days ago and wanted His Majesty to slap me down." Zhao Man opened his mouth and found that he was speechless. She thought for a moment, pursed her lips and said, "Well, that's because you bullied Brother Tang Zhao, Brother Tang Jing." "Then I don't care." Tang Ning shook her head and said, "I only know that you framed me, so I won't show it to you." She looked at Tang Ning and cried, You bullied me, Tang Ning was unmoved. Wait," the girl glared at him, twisted her butt and left angrily. Tang Ning picked up the pen again, hoping she wouldn't bother him again. In the royal study, the girl held Huang Chen's arm and said aggrievedly, "Father, he bullied Brother Tang Zhao and Brother Tang Jing, and now he's bullying me again." Chen Huang put down his ink pen and said, "You call me Brother Tang Zhao, you call me Brother Tang Jing. In fact, you should also call him brother." The girl said angrily, "I don't have such a brother." "Manner, stop messing around." Chen Huang looked at her, shook his head and said, "He has been bullied a lot since he was a child, and it took a lot of effort to get to where he is now. Don't bully him anymore." The girl snorted coldly and said, "Humph, I have seen him bully others, who else can bully him?" Chen Huang looked at her and explained, "You don't know, 20 years ago." After a while, the girl's eyes were red. She wiped her tears and asked, "Then, what about his mother?" Chen Huang shook his head and said, "It's gone." The girl who had lost her mother since she was a child was suddenly filled with sympathy and murmured, "Ah, he has never seen his mother in his whole life, he is even more pitiful than Manur." After writing for nearly an hour, Tang Ning left the room to get some fresh air. When she came back, she found that Zhao Man was sitting in his seat again. Zhao Man pointed at him and said, "You lied to me." Tang Ning looked at her and asked, "What did I lie to you about?" Zhao Man pointed to the freshly dried ink on the paper and said, "You wrote the fairy match, are you Tang Ning Ning?" Did I say I wasn't? You didn't say you were either. Why should I tell you that I am not? Zhao Man was a little dazed by what he said. He folded the paper on the table and said, I took it back and read it. Tang Ning looked at her and said, I didn't agree, you are just robbing her. Zhao Man said disdainfully, I'll just grab it, what are you going to do? Seeing Tang Ning walking over, she hurriedly stuffed the folded paper into her chest and said, do you dare to come and get it? Tang Ning really didn't dare. If someone sees this, and this little girl yells a few more indecent words, his innocence will be completely ruined. Innocence is secondary, molesting a princess or molesting a young girl, any one of these is a serious crime. He kept a distance of 3 steps from her and said, take a look and return it to me when you're done. I only have this one. Zhao Man stuck out her tongue at him and made faces, if you don't pay it back, I won't pay it back. Who told you to bully me? If you don't pay it back, you won't pay it back. If you don't pay it back, he won't want it. However, his advantage is not so easy to take advantage of. I hope she won't regret it in the future. Since the last time His Majesty made a surprise visit to the Imperial Academy, the atmosphere in the entire Imperial Academy has undergone earth-shaking changes. In the duty rooms, there are no longer officials playing chess and chatting. Everyone is performing their duties. Even if they have nothing to do, they will find something to do, which will double the pressure on the new Hanlin officials. The Hanlin Academy was not the only one to see such changes. Including the 6 departments, all government offices in Beijing have carried out a major rectification of the office atmosphere. In addition to paying close attention to arriving late and leaving early, and being passive and slow in work, we also carried out a general cleaning of the sanitation of the Yamen. After all, His Majesty came to the Hanlin Academy today, may go to the Imperial College tomorrow, and may make a surprise visit to one of the 6 Yamen in the next 2 days, so as to take precautions and be prepared. The idea that Manner came up with is really good. Emperor Chen looked at a memorial handed over by Wei Jian and said, from now on, I will take time to visit 2 government offices every month, so that those corpses can have nothing to do and work passively. I'll be careful with all the guys. If I catch one, I'll punish him severely. Wei Jian smiled, bowed, and said, Your Majesty is wise. Emperor Chen put down the memorial and asked, how are the preparations for things on the grassland going? Wei Jian said, Your Majesty, no intelligence has come back, but some time ago, the caravan sent by the imperial court has established contact with the Shuhu department. They are willing to exchange horses for our weapons and food. According to the time, it should have been the preparations are almost complete. Horses on the grassland are good things. Emperor Chen nodded and asked, where is Chu? Wei Jian continued, the Chu state chose to support the Jiagu tribe. Their speed should be faster than ours. I think they have already completed the preparations. In this way, the crisis on the grassland can be solved. No matter how powerful the Wanyan tribe is, it is just a tribe on the grassland. It is already somewhat stretched against the 2 tribes that have joined forces. Now they need to face not only the 2 major tribes, Jiagu and Shuhu, but also those behind them. It is almost impossible for Chen and Chu to win. Emperor Chen looked outside the palace and said slowly, the crisis in the grassland can be solved, but the crisis in Chu state is becoming increasingly urgent. It is a fact that Chu state is getting stronger day by day. Although Chen and Chu have been friends for many years, there are only interests between countries. Once Chu state's national power exceeds Chen state, friendly countries can turn into enemies in the blink of an eye. Wei Jian thought for a while and said, although the contemporary emperor of Chu is a heroic figure, in the past 2 years, his health seems to be not very good. The prince of Chu is mediocre. It is uncertain what will happen in the future. Why should your majesty worry? Emperor Chen sighed and said, I have to worry. The contemporary emperor of Chu is a rare master of the Zid. With the Chu state in his hands, the country's power is increasing day by day. Although he has been ill in the past 2 years, his half-father, my half-brother, is also a talented and strategic man. After 2 years of regency, Chu state has become more and more prosperous. How can I let go of Chen state with peace of mind? Wei Jian smiled and said, I am the third champion of the 2 champions, and there are countless virtuous ministers in the court. This is a grand occasion that has never been seen since the founding of the country. Your Majesty, you are worrying too much. Changning Palace. Zhao Man was a little confused after reading the latest volume of the fairy match. When she watched the fairy match before, she was naturally substituted by the 7 fairies. Because of her experiences, she was sometimes heartbroken and sometimes happy. After all, the 7 fairies are the daughters of the Emperor of Heaven, and she is the daughter of the Emperor. Their identities are similar, so they can easily be substituted. But today she read the new volume of the fairies match and wrote about a princess in the world. That princess was unruly and willful, savage and unreasonable. She always liked to steal other people's things. In addition, she also liked to scream. He even gave the princess a nickname, Princess Yingying. After reading this volume, she could no longer assume the role of the 7 fairies. I'm so angry, he did it on purpose. The girl tore the pages into pieces, her face filled with anger, and she rolled all over the bed. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 269. You do this deliberately. Tang Ning spread out the paper and picked up the pen. Zhao Man looked at him from the opposite side like an angry little hen with bulging eyes. Tang Ning moved her chair back and kept a certain distance from her to avoid misunderstanding. Zhao Man wrung her hands together and shook her body from side to side. I don't care, I don't want to be Princess Yingying. Who said you are Princess Yingying? Princess Yingying likes to steal other people's things. Does Her Royal Highness also like it? You. Zhao Man patted her chest and said with a smile, of course I don't like it, so how are you going to write Princess Yingying? Tang Ning thought for a while and said, this is just an unimportant supporting role. Let her get married. She can also make some contributions to the country. She will never appear again in the future. No, Zhao Man said anxiously, I don't want Princess Yingying to get married. Then let her marry the son of any prince or noble. No way. Find a reason to let her die of illness. No, no, no. This won't work, and that won't work either. Tang Ning handed her the pen and said, I'll give you the pen and you can write. What I write is different from what you write. Zhao Man twisted her waist and said, good brother, please write better about Princess Yingying. Snap. Snap. The 2 Hanlin editors, who looked like they were working, but were actually paying all their attention here, dropped the pen in their hands on the table, and felt even more anxious in their hearts. Tang Xiaozuan is not only a popular person in the eyes of the bachelor, but also a popular person in the eyes of His Majesty. The last time His Majesty came to the Hanlin Academy unexpectedly, they had already offended him once without waking him up. In the past few days, they wanted to find a chance to apologize, but before they had time to say anything, they encountered something that they shouldn't have seen. Tang Xiaozuan and the others couldn't afford to offend, and the princess couldn't afford to offend. No, they can't stay in this place any longer. They must ask Master Bachelor to help them change their room as soon as possible. If they stay here for a long time, let alone their career, their lives may not be safe. Stop. Princess Yingying's words of good brother made Tang Ning couldn't help but get excited and said hurriedly, Your Highness, just call me Tang Ning. Zhao Man looked at him and said, my name is Brother Tang Zhao, and I am also called Brother Tang Jing. Of course I can also call you brother. Tang Ning actually compared Tang Ersi to him. Tang Ning cupped her hand and said, Tang Ning doesn't dare to call the princess brother or sister. Let's not talk about this anymore. Zhao Man looked at him, blinked, and said, how about we make a deal? Tang Ning took a sip of water to calm down her shock and asked, what deal? Zhao Man looked at him with a smile and said, as for me, I won't go against you in the future, and I won't let my father beat you. As for you, just write the ending of Princess Yingying better. If there are new manuscripts in the future, let me take a look first. How about it? This is a typical evil person's thinking. Because I won't cause trouble for you, you have to listen to me. If other monsters said this to him, Tang Ning would slap him away. But who made this weirdo a princess? No one in the royal family can afford to offend her. Just give her a random ending and send her away, so that she doesn't have to come to his place all day long to act like a monster. If word spreads, others will think that he is seducing the princess in the palace. How will he behave in the future? Tang Ning nodded and said, deal. He pulled over a piece of paper and said, let's make a document. Zhao Man waved her hand and said, no need, I believe you. Tang Ning insisted, let's set one up. He also believes in himself. The key is that he doesn't want to trust someone, so it's better to establish a written document. It's written in black and white, and no one can deny it. Zhao Man signed her name on the paper, and then she realized what she was doing. She looked at Tang Ning and asked angrily, what do you mean? After finally seeing off Princess Yingying, Tang Ning had time to get busy. At the same time, somewhere in the check-in room, the Hanlin bachelor looked at the two Hanlin editors and frowned, you want to change the check-in room? In the Hanlin Academy, there are usually 3 or 4 people to a room, and for lower-ranking officials, there are 6 or 8 people. These are all arranged, how can they be changed at will? A Hanlin editor explained, Master Bachelor, we have no other intentions. It's just that Tang Xiaozan is the pillar of the country. It's very troublesome for me to come in and out on weekdays. I'm afraid it will affect him. Although Tang Xiaozan doesn't mind, but we feel sorry for ourselves. Another Hanlin editor glanced at him and sighed inwardly that he could actually think of such a reason. Academician Zhou looked at them and said, there are no redundant duty rooms in the Hanlin Academy. Can't you just keep your voices down when you go in and out on weekdays? The editor immediately said, sir, we don't need to occupy other rooms, we can just squeeze in with other colleagues. Academician Zhou patted the table and said, Wang Wang, are you bargaining with me? The two editors looked at each other, knelt on the ground, and said, I beg you, Bachelor, for your understanding. Academician Zhou looked at them and said in surprise, what are you? Tang Ning came back from a walk after lunch. She just walked into the check-in room and walked out again. After checking again, I realized that I was not wrong. He walked into the duty room again and looked at the 2 empty desks, a little dazed. In this duty room, including him, there were 3 Hanlin editors, and at this time, the other 2 editors' places had been vacated. Gu Bai came over and said, Master Xue said that he wants to give you a quiet environment, so he asked Wu Xiaozwen and Hu Xiaozwen to move into other duty rooms. From now on, this is your place alone. Looking at the empty room, Tang Ning's mood inexplicably improved. Of course, an office for one person is better than sharing it with others. You have your own space to be alone, and you can do whatever you want, freely and unrestrained. When you close the door, no one knows what happens inside. Which of the big leaders and bosses in the future does not have a separate office? Master Zhou is really considerate to him. I wonder when he will give him a secretary or something. The work of the Hanlin Academy can be said to be extremely idle. Tang Ning, who is idle, can't stay idle. Being alone in the duty room, no one is seen, and no one even talks. It's boring after a long time. It's not just the Hanlin Academy that is boring. During this period, both the court and the people are particularly calm, and nothing big has happened. He originally thought that after suffering such a big loss, the Tang family would immediately launch a violent revenge, and they were already prepared, but what he didn't expect was that during this period of time, the Tang family was completely quiet. Even Prince Duan became much more honest, and no longer opposed Prince Kong in the court. The Tang family and Prince Duan were extremely low-key. Of course, Prince Duan was low-key, and Prince Kong became high-profile. The successive victories made Prince Kang's influence in the court surpass Prince Duan in a short period of time. Naturally, he would not miss this opportunity to strike while the iron is hot and consolidate his power. Tang Ning didn't pay attention to these. A few days ago, a few bottles of sample wine were sent from Lingzhou. Although the whole brewing process has not yet been completed, the quality of the wine at this stage is far superior to all the fine wines on the market. This caused the old beggar to be drunk these days, and Xiao Xiao just had a break. My mother-in-law had said before that when they were not busy, they should come to the county government for dinner, and Tang Ning would go with them every few days. Recently, my father-in-law has been showing up more often during meals. Being the magistrate of Ping'an County is much busier than when he was the magistrate of Yong'an County. After all, the capital is a populous city, and there are countless trivial matters that happen every day. The entire county office is too busy to handle them, so my father-in-law's leisure seems strange. Not only is he idle, he seems to have something on his mind, and he drinks more frequently than usual. After Tang Ning finished his meal and was digesting his food in the county office, he happened to run into Peng Chen. After thinking for a while, he asked, "Has the county magistrate encountered trouble again recently?" This chapter is first published on AIU Voice Novel Network. Please remember the website address. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 270. My father-in-law is a man who can't hide things in his heart, and his emotions are clearly written on the website. The water in the capital is deep and muddy, not as good as Lingzhou, and there are naturally more twists and turns in the officialdom. The magistrate of Ping'an is in a very awkward position in the capital where the city is full of powerful people. The cause of this incident was the conflict between him and Zhao Xiancheng. After the original Ping'an county magistrate was demoted, according to common practice, the county magistrate's post would be temporarily replaced by the county magistrate. In most cases, if the county magistrate had been temporarily replaced for a long time, he would naturally be promoted to the official seal of the county. Zhao Xiancheng has already had enough experience in this position. He thought that if the original county magistrate committed a crime and was dismissed, he would be able to quickly become the main palace. Unexpectedly, His Majesty's decree parachuted down a county magistrate, and he still remains sitting firmly in his second spot. A county magistrate who doesn't want to be a county magistrate is not a good county magistrate. Except for Tang Ning, who is content with the status quo and hugs Xiao Xiao every day, teaches Xiao Xiao how to read, discusses with Fang Xiaoyu how to make millefeuille cake, and bickers with Fairy Tang when she's bored. No matter how boring it is, counting banknotes will feel like a salted fish at the pinnacle of life. A normal person has dreams and pursuits. As the saying goes, a strong dragon cannot suppress a local snake. This Zhao County magistrate has been running the county government for many years. In terms of control over the county government, naturally he cannot compare with an airborne county magistrate. The fast-moving Yamen servants in the Yamen could order and prohibit what he said, and were more willing to listen to him, the county magistrate, than to his father-in-law. After the father-in-law took office, there was actually a small friction between the two. Later, because of the seizure of the asterisk, he established some authority in the county government, and Zhao Xiancheng was able to live in peace for some time. In recent days, the other party has intensified his efforts, and together with other officials in the county government, there is a tendency to exclude him. Although the county magistrate is the official seal of the county, he cannot fully control the affairs within the county government. It is not uncommon for the county magistrate to evade the county magistrate in local county governments. Peng Chen looked at him and said, "Even though Your Excellency is determined to rectify the situation, many of the county government servants and officials are obeying Your Majesty's words. As a result, Your Excellency will naturally be restrained in doing things." Tang Ning thought for a while and asked, "Don't you have any people of your own in this county government?" Yes, Peng Chen nodded and said, "If Your Excellency hadn't united several officials a long time ago, there wouldn't be a stalemate between the two parties now. A stalemate is not good for anyone. There is always one party who wants to break the deadlock and waits for others to break it. It is better to break it yourself and at least take the initiative." Tang Ning thought for a while, looked at him and said, "You're like this." After hearing this, Peng Chen was stunned and asked, "How can you take the initiative to look for trouble?" Tang Ning looked at him and said, "You are a head catcher, so you can just find any excuse. Do you still want me to teach you about this kind of thing?" Peng Chen thought for a while, nodded and said, "I understand. You can teach me." Tang Ning nodded and walked back to the back office. Peng Chen walked out of the front office, looked at a policeman in the courtyard, and waved, "Wei San, come here." Wei San came over, looked at him with his head tilted, and said in a disdainful tone, "Peng Kaptu, are you okay?" When the county magistrate was there, he, Wei San Ke, was the head catcher of Ping'an County government. After the current magistrate Zhong came, he was demoted to a squad leader and replaced by the head catcher Peng. Look at this Peng surnamed person. It's unpleasant everywhere. After the county magistrate has completely ousted Magistrate Zhong, he will be the first to arrest him. Peng Chen glanced at him and asked, "Where is your hat?" Wei San glanced at him sideways and said, "I forgot to wear it." "Forgot to wear it?" Peng Chen slapped him in the face and said coldly, "Your image is the image of the county government. Who told you not to wear a hat? Have you ever seen a county magistrate rise to court without wearing an official hat?" Hat. Wei San was stunned in place, half of his face was burning, and a dark palm print was clearly visible. "Peng, you are going too far," Wei San reacted, covering his face and glaring at him. Just as he said this, Peng Chen slapped him on the other side of the face. "You are still reasonable without wearing a hat. You. What are you? Just wait for me." Wei San glared at him, covered his face and ran away. A good man never suffers any immediate losses. Peng is very skilled and is no match for him. However, the county magistrate has long been dissatisfied with Magistrate Zhong for his support of Peng. This time, the magistrate can take advantage of this opportunity and withdraw his arrest. Head. In a side hall of the county government office, County Magistrate Zhao looked at Wei San and asked, "Peng Cap to beat you for no reason?" Wei San nodded repeatedly and said, "Sir, he slapped his subordinate twice because he didn't wear a hat. This clearly shows that he doesn't take you seriously. Maybe it was secretly ordered by Magistrate Zhong. Beating a dog depends on the owner." County Magistrate Zhao frowned and said, Zhong Mingli, after enduring it for so long, have you finally declared war on me?" He sneered and said, "I want to see how he explains this matter to me." A figure walked in from outside the door. Zhao Yuner looked at him and asked, "Dad, do you have to have trouble with Magistrate Zhong?" "What do you, a girl?" "No." Zhao Xiancheng glanced at her and said, "Go back to your room and stay there. Don't look for Zhong Mingli's daughter again," he said coldly and strode out of the door. Zhao Yuner stood there, tears welling up in her eyes. After a long time, she wiped her eyes and slowly walked out of the room. In a certain hall of the county government, Tang Ning looked at Peng Chen and said speechlessly, "I asked you to find a reason at will, and you can also find a better reason, such as inability to do things, being passive and slow in work, etc. What is the reason for not wearing a hat? Peng Chen asked calmly, isn't this a reason? What do you think? Zhou Mingli took a few steps in the hall and said, it doesn't matter if you have a clear falling out with County Magistrate Zhao. Although it will cause discord in the county government, we can't let him continue to cause trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, a government servant walked in and said, Sir, County Magistrate Zhao is here. Tang Ning retreated to the back hall, and Zhao Xiancheng walked in from the door. Zhou Mingli bowed his hands to him and said, Xiancheng Zhao is looking for me, but what's the important matter? It's nothing important, Zhao Xiancheng said calmly, but Mr. Zhou didn't care about Mr. Peng beating his subordinates for no reason, but I want to ask him clearly. Zhou Mingli said calmly, this order was given by this official. Each of them represents the county government. Those who are disheveled will damage the image of the county government. It will make the people outside see us and other government officials. Our county government is a place of rules and etiquette. If anyone is like him, how can we control him? Zhao Xiancheng looked at him and asked, when did Mr. Zhou give this order? Why don't I know? Zhou Mingli looked at him and said in a deep voice, any order I give must require the consent of Zhao Xiancheng. Zhao Xiancheng was speechless for a moment. He did not expect that Zhou Mingli would actually use such a method to exonerate Peng Kaptu. It seemed that he was the instigator behind this matter. Of course not. Zhao Xiancheng looked at Zhou Mingli and said, it's just that if the county magistrate has any orders, he should discuss them with his colleagues, so as not to end up with a reputation of being arbitrary. Zhou Mingli waved his hand and said, I can make the decision on such a small matter, so why bother others? Zhao Xiancheng took a deep look at Zhou Mingli and said, I will resign first. Beating up a county magistrate Zhao was just a matter of venting his anger in his heart. It was not that easy to seize his power, break up his allies, and make everyone in the county government obey him. Tang Ning and Peng Chen stood in front of the corridor, looked at him, and said, if you want to cause trouble, you can't be so obvious. If someone beats him up without wearing a hat, and he is not convinced, others will also think that you are bullying others, you can give him an errand. If he can't do it well, you'll whip him. If he can do it well, you'll give him another errand. There will always be a time when he can't do it well. At that time, you can't do it well. You can slap him as much as you want, and no one else will have any objections, do you understand? Peng Chen thought for a while, nodded and said, I understand. Wei San stood in the yard, listening to the conversation between the two people on the porch, covering his swollen face, and his body was shaking like chaff. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 271. Isn't this Wei Bantu? What are you doing here? Peng Chen turned around and saw Wei San, rolled up his sleeves and said, the county government is so busy, and you still have time to be in a daze here. Are you passively slacking off and want to be lazy? Wei San patted his head and said, Captain Peng, I suddenly remembered that there is still a dispute in Zhangjia village. I will go to coordinate it immediately. Although Ping'an County is located in the capital, there are not many major events on weekdays. First of all, this is the foot of the emperor in the capital, and the probability of major cases happening is very low. Even if it really happens, there are Jingzhou Prefecture and the Ministry of Justice above. When there is no arrangement from above, the county government usually just adjusts neighborhood disputes and catches thieves. These things are not taken seriously by the yamen runners and constables. It's not a matter of life and death. How can it be comfortable to run around outside than to sit in the classroom? But in the past 2 days, things have changed a little. Some constables in the county government would rather run around outside than sit in the classroom and enjoy themselves. At least outside, you won't be punished for not wearing a hat, sitting in an incorrect posture, or farting while eating. In 2 days, all the team leaders who originally belonged to Zhao County Magistrate were replaced, and the reasons were varied, such as ineffective work, passive slacking, stepping left foot first when entering the door, stepping right foot first when entering the door, and so on and so forth. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the county magistrate was cleaning up the county government. Zhao County Magistrate joined forces with several assistants to secretly trip up Zhou County Magistrate. Unexpectedly, Zhou County Magistrate was more straightforward than them and didn't give Zhao County Magistrate any face. His team in the county government was almost cleaned up within 2 days. For these, Zhao County Magistrate had no way to do anything. After all, Zhou County Magistrate was the official seal of a county. The transfer of these yamen runners was just a matter of words for him. It was nothing more than whether he was willing to completely tear his face with Zhao County Magistrate. In the past, the bailiffs dared to disobey Magistrate Zhou's orders. Anyone who dared to disobey in the past 2 days would be beaten immediately. In this situation, everyone must keep their eyes open. If they are not careful, they will be killed as an example by Magistrate Zhou. Wei San dragged his tired body in from outside. When he saw Peng Chen, his body subconsciously trembled. He kept a certain distance from Peng Chen and said, "Peng, Captain Peng, the thief has been caught." Quick action. Peng Chen nodded and said, "Your hat." "I wore it." Wei San's face turned pale, and he hurriedly touched his head and said, "I wore it." "Don't be nervous." Peng Chen walked over, helped him adjust his hat, and said, "Remember next time, don't wear it crooked." Wei San nodded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, I will remember." Peng Chen patted him on the shoulder and said, "I have an errand to give you, you may have to run more, be prepared." Wei San would rather run around outside than go back to the county government office. He was happy and asked, "We are all working for the court, running more is nothing." "That's good, it's not much, only a few thousand miles, remember to prepare a few more pairs of shoes." Since Wei San, the leader of the Wei team, accidentally broke his leg while walking, none of the leaders of several important departments in the county government office were people of Zhao Xiancheng. Although these bailiffs and constables have no status in the county government and can only be used when running errands, it is not enough for Zhao County Magistrate to be alone. Someone must execute his orders. He cannot do everything himself. This time, all his confidants have been replaced. From now on, he will be in the dark and have a hard time in the county government. County Magistrate's Office. An official looked at County Magistrate Zhao and asked, "Sir, this time County Magistrate Zhou replaced you and me. We don't know what he will do next time. Are we going to watch it?" County Magistrate Zhao put down his teacup and said, "Zheng County Magistrate, please be patient. Temporary gains and losses are nothing. Zhou Mingli really thinks that the position of Ping'an County Magistrate is so easy to sit. Let's wait and see. He won't be proud for long." Zheng County Magistrate thought for a while and said, "Sir, this Zhou County Magistrate seems to have some connections in Beijing. His son-in-law is a new champion and works in the Hanlin Academy. If we do this, will it be?" County Magistrate Zhao glanced at him and said, "Don't you think it's too late for you and me to say these things now? Do you and I still have room to retreat?" Zheng County Magistrate sighed and said, "In this case, I will not say more. I will take my leave." After Zheng County Magistrate left, County Magistrate Zhao picked up the teacup again and put it down after a while. Because of what happened in the county government office in the past 2 days, his expression was a little gloomy, and a little helpless. After all, he was just a county magistrate. Although he had been in the county government office for more than 10 years, he was still inferior to the county magistrate. He was still unable to force himself to compete with county magistrate Zhou. It was not his wish to fall out with county magistrate Zhou, but how many things in life can be done according to one's own wishes? He walked out of the government office and said, "Prepare the sedan chair. I have to go out for a while." Tang Ning and Xiao I and Xiru walked out of the county government office, looked at them and said, "If you are bored at home, learn to do business with Yao Yao. You have to worry about the family business, and you can't always let others take care of it." Xiru nodded and said, "Miss Yao Yao is already teaching me. Xiao Yi is not interested in business matters. Xiao Ru is careful and has opened a silk and satin shop before, so she has some experience. Tang Ning does not intend to train her to become a strong woman like Tang Yao Yao, but let her find her daily life. It's good to do something to pass the time." When the three of them were about to walk out of the county government office, a figure walked over from the front. When they saw them, they lowered their heads and hurriedly walked away. "Xiao Ru asked in confusion, "What's wrong with Miss Zhao?" Zhou Yi lowered her head, with a sad expression on her face. She had also heard about what happened in the county government in recent days. She didn't know how to face Zhao Yun'er. "Miss Zhao may have something urgent." Tang Ning smiled, held their hands, and said, "Let's go back. We don't have anything to do tonight, so why not go for a walk in Tianashanju?" Tang Ning was sitting in his own check-in room, and Princess Yingying sat quietly opposite him, reading the new volume he had just written. Tang Ning did not continue writing. He was thinking about a question. When he first came to this world, he met Xiao Xiao, who is now his sister. Not long after, she met Fang Xiaoyu. She called Brother Tang Ning and Brother Tang Ning all day long, which can be regarded as his half-sister. When he first came to Beijing, he met Tang Shui. Later, Tang Shui became his sister. Then he met Su Mei, and then Su Mei also became her sister. Seriously, Princess Yingying called him "Okay brother" seems to be right. It seemed that the girls around him, except for Xiao Ru and Xiao Yi, eventually became either his elder sister or his younger sister. This is really a puzzling thing. By the way, Tang Yejing also needs to be eliminated. If he has a sister like her, his life will be ruined by him. Zhao Man put down the 2 volumes of Dragon and the 8 parts that he had just written, curled his lips and said, "What are you writing about? Why do lovers end up becoming brothers and sisters? How can it be like this?" Tang Ning didn't even raise her head. She just read the book carefully. If she didn't like it, she just didn't read it. She read the book for free and liked to mess around, so she didn't bother to talk to her. Zhao Man leaned on the chair, sighed leisurely, and said, "Tell me, why do people have troubles? How great would it be if they were carefree and happy every day?" Tang Ning said casually, "Many of people's worries are caused by mediocrity. Don't fight with yourself. Don't argue with stupid people. No matter what they say, just say okay, you're right. Where do you get this fallacy?" Zhao Man glanced at him and said, "As long as you are a human being, you will have worries. Even my father has worries. To put it nicely, don't you have worries?" Tang Ning picked up her pen and continued writing while saying, "Well, you're right, everything you said is right.